Back at it with another banger, Alaskan Rants. Who am I here with today?
Hey, Nick Begich, running for Congress here in Alaska.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Good to meet you.
So, why are you running for office?
Look, at the end of the day, this is about getting our state back. It's about getting our country back. We've got a situation where the right and the left have very different views about where they'd like to see Alaska go, our nation go, and quite frankly, the party of JFK, that old Democrat party, it's dead. It's gone. It's been hijacked. Today's Democrat party has been hijacked by the hard left, and this is the most important election of our lifetimes so far. You hear that every 2 years. This year, it really is true. I believe we've got to get America First Republicans back in office to represent the true will of the people. And Alaska has a role to play. We've got a really important role to play as we pivot supply chains out of China and into either friendlier shores or domestic locations. And Alaska has the chance to be a central part of that realignment of our supply chains nationwide. The only way that's going to happen, though, is if we have somebody in the House that can tell Alaska's story again. The thing to remember is there's 435 members of the United States House. We only get one. All right, just one. One voice for all of Alaska.
It's crazy.
And it is crazy. And in order for us to make sure that our story is told, we have to have someone in the House that can tell that story loud, passionately, and in a compelling way, in a way that's really going to pull in people from all sides of the aisle. And I keep telling people, look, Joe Biden has attacked our state, 65 executive orders and counting, directly targeting our ability and our right to produce our resources. These rights were guaranteed to us under our statehood compact, and the federal government has reneged on that compact, and that reneging has accelerated under Joe Biden's tenure. Kamala Harris is going to do the same thing, but there is an argument to be made. Look, if you actually care about the environment, whether you're a young person out there, you're concerned about the earth, maybe you're someone who's in the center or even over on the left and saying, well, shouldn't we care about the environment? Yeah, absolutely we should. And we know that resource development is done more responsibly in Alaska than anywhere else on earth. So if you care about the earth, if you care about the environment, you should demand that the work be done here and not in some third world jurisdiction where they don't care. That's right. So they've shut down our state, so you have to ask yourself, well, is it really about the environment? Couldn't be. It's a political outcome they're trying to engineer, where they turn Alaska blue because they get rid of those high-paying, high-quality, family-oriented resource jobs in exchange for government positions. And over time, they know they'll flip that state. And they say, hey, that's 2 Senate seats. And it's a whole lot cheaper to do that here in Alaska than it is in a state like Texas or Florida. And so they look at us as an opportunity politically, but their policies are hurting the people of our state. I believe that we need a stronger voice in D.C. to push back against that. That's why I'm running. Long answer, but that's why I'm running.
Well, that's an amazing answer, and I hope you get in that seat, sir. We need someone like you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So bring it back down to a local level. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting? What do you think that's doing to the state?
Yeah, I have been a vocal opponent of ranked choice voting. I was proud to sign the repeal petition to get ranked choice voting out and our traditional method back in. And let me tell you why, right? Initially, this was sold to the public as a way to get dark money out of politics. I'm all for getting dark money out of politics. But that vehicle was used to sell the public in Alaska on the ranked choice voting method. And the problem with ranked choice voting is it's easily manipulated. For people who were paying attention back in 2022, you saw that Al Gross was actually removed from the ballot, right? And only one candidate continued in the special election from the left side of the aisle, and that person was Mary Peltola.
Right.
Well, when you're unchallenged on your side of the aisle, you can run a very moderate-sounding campaign, and that's what Mary Peltola did. In fact, many people thought she was actually a Republican because her policies sounded so Republican.
Right.
Well, she's not. We see that now. She's got a voting record. She votes with Joe Biden 80% of the time, Nancy Pelosi 90% of the time, Ilhan Omar 85% of the time. And let's think about who these people are. Nancy Pelosi is a San Francisco Democrat. And I know Alaskans, we would never elect a San Francisco Democrat to represent us. But that's what we got because of ranked choice voting, because ranked choice failed to produce a proper informational outcome for the public so that they could truly measure who their candidates are.
Right.
It also creates what I call a delayed primary effect. So that delayed primary that we would normally have settled in August gets extended when you have more than one person in the campaign all the way through to the November election. You're just continuing to run a primary all the way to the end. You never have an opportunity to broaden the base and have a conversation with the rest of the state because you're talking to, that base on your side of the aisle. So that creates another problem. It creates a third problem in that because you have multiple candidates on your side of the aisle, you're sharing financial resources. And unfortunately, and I wish it weren't the case, but campaigns are very expensive. And to maintain two teams and to maintain two sets of media outreach efforts and all those things, it just spreads those limited financial resources super thin. Now, I will say this. I'm proud to be the one candidate in this race that has more than half of their money coming from actual Alaskans.
Right.
90% of the money coming to the major candidates in this race is that's not me, is coming from outside the state.
Yeah.
And it's
so
unfortunate. Don Young had a great concept when he was still with us. His concept was the money that is spent in federal races should really only come from the districts that those people are there to represent.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great idea. Let's let the voices of the people that you're there to represent decide who it is they'd like to see in office. Unfortunately, right now we're seeing huge money come in from outside. A lot of that's PAC money. Over $1 million, in fact, has come in just to Mary Peltola's campaign in this election cycle from PACs, political action committees.
That is crazy. I guess my next question would be, what are your thoughts on the carbon capturing plant? I've heard mixed opinions on it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it actually good for the environment? Or is it just a tax scheme?
Yeah, let me tell you, it's interesting when you talk about the carbon, we'll call it an ecosystem, right? The carbon ecosystem has been constructed, but the base fundamental idea is that carbon, that's being told to us, carbon is bad for the environment. Look, carbon is plant food. You need carbon dioxide, right? If we did not have carbon dioxide in the environment, every plant on Earth would die. In fact, anything under 200 parts per million in atmospheric carbon results in plant death for certain species. And the lower it goes, the fewer plants we actually have. So you need carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Something like 97% of all atmospheric carbon comes from natural sources, right? And you can see that in the isotopic ratios when you do these measurements of atmospheric carbon. Predominantly, the vast majority of it is coming from natural sources. So there's a natural carbon cycle that occurs. What's really happening is a global emergency is being created in order to, in my opinion, in order to erode our individual freedoms and rights as nation states. We have those rights enshrined to us, and any time that you see groups like the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund start wading into climate science, why are they doing that? They're doing that in order to politicize scientific issues so they can leverage those to erode national sovereignty. And that is what has been happening. The science does not follow the rhetoric.
It's an unproven theory.
That's right. And why should we be giving up our rights as individuals and our rights as a nation? When you look at what's happening globally, China's kicking up a new coal plant every couple of days, right? Their carbon footprint is soaring. And what sort of restrictions are being placed on them? Effectively none, right? And so what's really being asked of the Western world is to reduce their energy output in exchange for dramatic increases in energy output in China and India.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not in our national interest to do this. And actually, if you look at the carbon emissions of the United States, they've actually been on a downward trajectory over the last 20 years. So if there's an issue with carbon, they're talking to the wrong people. Americans have bent the curve and actually have reduced their carbon footprint. And if you ask these people, hey, what about nuclear, right? Cleanest energy you've got on Earth. They say no. right? And so then, yeah, you've got to start asking deeper questions about what is the true objective? Why don't they want human flourishing, greater population? What really is the agenda on the left? And again, I think it gets back to the idea that the hard left has hijacked today's Democrat Party. And frankly, their policies are anti-American, they're anti-human, and they're just a little weird.
I would agree. As you know, we had a pretty low voter turnout here in the last municipal election. What do you think was the result of that? Why do you think that was?
Well, look, I think people are fatigued. There's a lot of political fatigue. I think what would help to drive greater voter turnout in local elections is to do what they've done in some areas of the state, which is to sync the election date for municipal elections with federal election dates. If you do that, you're going to have higher turnout that's more representative of the public will. I think just for normal people out there, it can be a little difficult to keep track of all the different election times and dates. People have jobs, they have lives, they have kids. Sometimes those jobs take them around the state or even out of state. And so keeping track of all these things is not really something that a lot of people are able to do, right? Frankly, in the Biden economy, there's a lot of people with 2 and 3 jobs, and I meet them all the time, and it's really tough. It's really sad to see working parents. You got 2-parent households where these parents, they're not just both working, they're both working multiple jobs.
Right.
And you can't expect those folks to be able to take time out and get involved in that process. So I think syncing up those dates to federal election dates is a better way to drive improved engagement.
That's a fresh perspective I haven't heard, and I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for answering those questions, Nick. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the chance to talk.
Of course.